when bricks used to look like this, but now they look like this? Or when diamonds used to actually be useful? And these are the downgrades, both big and small, that have happened to Minecraft. But first, we got another downgrade to talk about. Since remember when the subscribe button used to be red? Yeah, I missed that too, surprisingly. But you can actually fix that still, since when you subscribe, it'll turn rainbow for a split second. So watch closely, try it for yourself, and thank you. It helps out a ton. To most, finding out that Minecraft isn't infinite is already a letdown. Sure enough, if you go 30 million blocks in any direction, you're gonna find out that there is something that stops you. And what is it in recent versions? A world border, which is a far cry from how interesting this used to be back in the older versions of the game. Since back in the beta versions, we could have found something called the Farlands, which the fact that it's still a Minecraft legend and most players have come in after these were around speaks to how cool they are. It's an important part of the game's history, and it's unfortunate that it's left into these old decrepit versions, a lot of which are hard to play these days. So while in Mojang's eyes this was a coding error and needed to be patched out, in the communities it was a downgrade. And I think the fact that there's mods that bring this back in recent versions speak to the fact that if it was added back in, it wouldn't be a letdown. Why do so many players still play on version 1.8.9? Now, it's not because they don't like elytras, and definitely not because they don't like the sniffer, but the real reason is that with the combat update, Minecraft's combat changed a lot, but whether it changed for the better, it's a matter of interpretation. And while I do think that there's arguments to be made that we shouldn't be spam clicking and instead moving over to a more methodical method, the idea that you're no longer able to block with swords like we could in the past, that's something that I do miss. Granted, shields were added in, but considering the fact that Mojang's still looking into making combat changes in later experimental snapshots, I think it's safe to say that even they realized that they didn't hit the nail on the head with this update yet. And it's not like it exactly made it more balanced either. I mean, now stone axes deal more damage than diamond swords. So there was a new meta, but is it a better meta? I have to disagree. A lot of fans were clearly very excited when we got the Caves and Cliffs update with changes to our world generation. And as we should be, it made the game a lot more impressive to play around with. But not every change to the game's world generation's been met so kindly. And in beta 1.8, a lot of players were not a fan of how the new worlds looked. Here, the plains biomes became incredibly flat, with little to no variation between the blocks or the height. And what was even worse is if you happen to have the misfortune to spawn in the middle of the ocean. When you don't have any trees nearby to get you off that survival island, you might as well just start a new seed. And for a while, an ocean would be a death sentence without a boat. And back then, boats weren't exactly easy to row around in either. And so it's amazing to see how far we've come in our world generation since then. After all, a big part of how you play the game just comes down to the seed that you're given, so when so many of them ended up being rotten, you could see how this was a clear downgrade to what there was before. And while the Caves and Cliffs update did obviously make the worlds a lot prettier to look at, it did not make them faster to look at. And ever since about 1.18, for those of us on Java Edition, the performance has taken a huge dive. Sure, the worlds look a lot more impressive, but now you just get to enjoy them in Slideshow Edition. Oh, that's fun. And the fact that so many players have to play with something like Optifine or Sodium to be even able to play the game, that's pitiful. And I get it, Mojang's split between the two different versions for optimization, but when there's clearly options out there that can make this playable, it's a shame that none of those have made it into the base game. And instead, it seems like they just keep updating the game until all of us are eventually forced over into those third-party options anyway. Before we had wool blocks, we used to have cloth blocks, which functionally were the same thing, just a different name, but also they had different colors as well. And while some of the color types have remained the same, I mean, we had blue wool the same that we have blue cloth, the different shades of those colors have been lost, and I think that's unfortunate. I mean, builders are always looking for more blocks to be able to build with, so getting rid of any of them, that seems like a rough deal. And if there was some way to craft our wool blocks, or maybe even dye them into these colors in newer versions, I think a lot of players would be a lot happier. At least for pixel art, it'd be nice to have a whole bunch of new shades, just saying. Minecraft isn't a scary game, but here's how it got so much darker after 1.19. And no, it's not because of the ancient cities or the actual darkness effect that you get from the Warden, it actually comes down to the game's files, and specifically, what you're not allowed to do with them anymore. See, prior to version 1.19, we were able to go into the game's options text file, and ourselves increase our gamma past its regular limit. So instead of having a brightness of 100, we could basically give ourselves permanent full bright. But now that's just not the case. Try to do this nowadays, and you're just gonna be stuck at the top brightness. It's pretty disappointing. I mean, speaking as someone who likes to record videos at full bright so that we can actually see it on a screen, it's unfortunate having to go and find a secondary mod to be able to do this. Is it a major inconvenience? No, we record with other mods anyway, but I also think that if you own the game, you should be allowed to do with it what you want. I mean, it's pretty obvious you're not doing something intended when you're going and changing the file. Why would you code it out? Just seems weird to me. Now, when you're playing Minecraft, you're probably not using a horse very much. I mean, ever since the elytra, these have not seemed like the best inclusion in Minecraft. And while that itself is a downgrade, it doesn't seem like Mojang's done kicking the horse when it's dead. Since in between updates, Mojang actually changed the horse model to make it look a lot less detailed. And now if you take a look at the hooves of the horse or the actual snout, you'll realize it's quite a bit different. Now compare this to the skeleton horse, which I actually think got an upgrade in how it looks. and it seems even sadder. Now, I'm not saying they should have looked exactly how they looked in Mo Creatures, because that's a little too high res of a texture for Minecraft, especially back then, but I don't get what made them choose to change the look this way. Just feels weird. If you used to play Minecraft back in the beta versions, then you're used to your hotbar looking a lot different. Since before beta version 1.8, the hunger bar did not exist at all, and instead, eating food would just help you to regenerate. And of course, since the game's full release, we've only had the hunger bar for a generation, which I'll be honest, when you see how quickly we were able to heal in some of these old examples, it does kind of feel like I'm missing out. Add on to that the fact that Minecraft does not incentivize you to play around with the different foods that you eat. I mean, get golden carrots and you're good for life. I just feel like there's more to do here than what was actually added in. Oh, and while we're at it, I also miss the old cooked pork texture, but that I will fully admit is just nostalgia talking. That I like outlines. Now, when you think of changes to Minecraft's cave generation, you're probably also thinking about the Caves and Cliffs update, which don't get me wrong, that did that. And while that was obviously a very popular change, what was less so was the way that cave generation changed after 1.7.2, which caused a lot of players to not like how it was anymore. The older caves were confusing, but there was definitely a lot more to do. No one was calling them boring, they were calling them Swiss cheese. And I think that gives you a pretty good idea at how intricate they were. And in fairness, caving kinda has to be interesting, otherwise the only alternative is branch mining, and that is much more boring than any kind of Swiss cheese that we can get up to. And thankfully Mojang seemed to fix this with the other caves that we now have today. Minecraft bricks, even though they were added in pretty early on to Minecraft, are not that popular of a building block. And one of the reasons for that could be the change in texture. See, if you ask me, the old brick texture was much better, given a vibrant, colorful red brick. Nowadays you look at him and it just seems sad. At this point I just feel like I'm using dirt with a better blast resistance. And while I do think that we've seen some cool build hacks where you can use these inside of actual walls to make it look like it's eroding away, that's not to say anything's better about the texture. Actually, it kinda says quite the opposite. But both examples have never lined up in the brick texture like this, so at least they didn't downgrade that. It stayed equally bad. And a lot of the criticism that you hold against the bricks texture changes can also be said about oak planks. See, before the texture changes happened to Minecraft as a whole in 1.14, oak wood looked very much more distinct. And nowadays the texture's technically better defined, but it also looks blurry. And don't get me wrong, it's a lot better than the first texture for wooden planks. That was pretty much a mess. But I think even the original texture that Jasper tweeted out for this would have been a lot better than what we got today. It's definitely a lot easier to read. And honestly, I'm a little sad that we didn't get this. I would have just preferred not to know that it existed instead of being tempted and then not getting it. While other ores in Minecraft have been given more recipes and uses, hence giving them more value, Minecraft's most iconic ore, diamond, has really just stayed the exact same. I mean, one of the most notable changes for diamond is that now you can turn it into something better. That doesn't exactly seem like we're honoring how important it is. Add on to that the fact that you're able to get diamond tools much easier through villagers than actually going and mining, and really it seems almost pointless to try and go mining for some diamond ore. So if you've ever wondered why diamonds don't feel as special anymore, it's not because they've gotten worse, it's because everything around them's gotten better by comparison. It's a rising tide that did not lift this ship. Surviving your first night in Minecraft used to be a real challenge. That's because in the early days of Minecraft, nighttime was scary. But now, as many other people have pointed out, there's just too much in Minecraft that makes this not even a threat anymore. Not that it was that much of a threat if you were smart about it in the past. I mean, dig straight down, cover yourself up, you're fine. But with how often you're able to find villages and then find beds, we're able to instantly sleep through that scary night and not even have to worry about it. Not to mention that the game also incentivizes you to use a bed anyway, and not tough out the night, because of how annoying phantoms are. At that point, nights seem less scary and a lot more like an inconvenience. And in the same way that I wouldn't call traffic scary, I can't say the same for Minecraft anymore. When Minecraft changed the way that its ores looked, a lot of players were unhappy. Now I get it, the changes were made for color blindness, and I don't even really want to speak on so much these regular ores. I will point out how, if they were trying to change ores to make them more appropriate for color blindness, then why didn't the texture for the ancient debris change? Doesn't exactly pop from netherrack. I don't know. The fact that there isn't proper colorblind support options inside of Minecraft's accessibility menu anyway, that makes me feel like that would have been a way to change the textures and have a lot more players actually be happy. Though I will say if I have one grievance with the texture changes, it's that diamond ore between 1.14 and 1.17 got a lot more muddied and blurred out in its texture. Oddly enough, making it harder to read. Go figure. In the transition from Minecraft 1.12 to 1.13, Mojang removed numerical IDs for a lot of features in Minecraft. This was referred to as the flattening. And if you've ever wondered why a lot of technical players choose to play on 1.12, that's partially for this reason. Since back then, you were able to change the color of sand or concrete using only redstone, which is pretty cool. But this also got rid of helpful features like being able to have a water or lava flowing source, or a stagnant source. Both were in there as separate IDs. And I've always wanted to be able to hold a portal block in my hand like we can on Bedrock. Without these numerical IDs, that's just not possible. And it's unfortunate, especially as we're able to turn on admin developer tools inside of our creative menu. We can have a debug analog stick, we can have this other stuff, is all I'm saying. As we briefly mentioned in this video, original Minecraft textures used to have bold outlines that made them pop a lot more. And it's hard to say that these original textures didn't look a lot more iconic. I mean, for one, they existed while the game was becoming the literal most popular game in the world. That helps to make it popular. But now, if you look at the newer textures, they're definitely a lot cleaner. And I would gladly hear out any argument that tells me that these are technically better made. I mean, for one, they're not programmer art anymore. You've got literal artists working on it. But looking better and fitting Minecraft are two different things. And so, for some of us old folks who've been playing it for so long, it does sometimes feel like a downgrade to look at the texture differences. Though that said, some have definitely gotten better. If I were to never look at the old Netherrack texture ever again, it would still be too soon. Outside of just the regular villager texture, the most iconic villager profession that's ever been in Minecraft was the librarian. But not this one. Sure, the book as a hat is pretty funny, but it's the original long white coat texture that became synonymous with Dr. Trayaurus in DanTDM's Minecraft series. And that was just one of the many different coats that these villagers were able to wear, giving them a lot more color for sure. But in later updates, Mojang would remove this and instead give them other accessories that made it a lot more clear as to which villager did what profession, which I'll fully admit is a fair reasoning, but come on, I don't think Trayaurus would caught on this much if he was walking around with a fez like this the whole time. There's something to be said about the old classics. Trap chests have never been that good at trapping people. I mean, for one, they have a bloody nose on the texture, so if you look at it for longer than a second, you can tell that it's gonna be a fake. But also, there's just better ways to trap people now. Observers and skulk sensors make everything basically trapped, so why would you even need to use this for that? But it did used to have a use, since in the past, the only way to be able to place chests next to each other like this was to alternate between regular and trapped chests. And this seemed like it would have been the solution until Mojang added in different wood-type variants for our chests. However, we didn't get that. The much more surprising feature that we got is just the ability to place chests next to each other regardless, which is great for chests and terrible for trap chests, and for tripwire hooks. I don't really have to craft those anymore. And considering there wasn't something else that made the trap chest more useful after, it's a shame that these got downgraded in such a way. In some of the oldest versions of Minecraft, it was possible that if you pressed the F7 key, you were able to take isometric screenshots, which are really cool to see. It's such a letdown that this feature doesn't exist anymore. I mean, don't get me wrong, there was plenty of times that it would glitch out and miss things out of the chunks. But also, look me in the face and tell me it wouldn't be cool to scroll through your feed and see your friends show off their builds in this way instead of just the regular FOV 30, full draw distance, shaders on. It would definitely stick out. And if I accidentally press this key to take a screenshot, it'd at least be funnier to look back at. Since when I just press a screenshot with F2, it looks the exact same as how I remember it. I'm not even getting a different angle. For a long time, fishing wasn't that useful in Minecraft. But when Mojang added in a treasure loot table and things like Luck of the Sea and Lure, our fishing hooks got a lot more useful, which also brought along with it the ability and need for AFK fish farms. And while those were a great way to get different resources in the past, especially when you could use one of these to get mending enchanted books as a treasure item, Mojang eventually decided they weren't really fans of having AFK treasure on demand. And so they changed it in 1.16 for the treasure loot to only spawn if you had a very specific set of circumstances for the body of water. And while there are farms to fix this nowadays, they're way more of a pain to build. I mean, the fact that I was able to memorize the design for the old fish farms speaks to how easy they were to build. You can carry all the materials for it in just a few item slots. And so while I get it for balancing reasons, you also can't look at it and call it a downgrade. At the very least, it was a nerf. Bone meal's a great thing, but it used to be so much better. Since in the past, you could immediately push a crop to its final stage, instead of getting a random buff like we do today, which made it a lot more hilarious to spam trees on your friend's lawn, but I get why it was fixed. It definitely was overpowered. This screenshot is illegal in modern Minecraft, and it's nothing to do with what's in the picture, but rather the picture itself. Since for only a brief time during Minecraft's history, there was an implementation where you were able to take 645 megapixel screenshots. And as Mumbo put that into perspective, a 1080p screen is 2 megapixels. An 8K screen, that would be 33 megapixels. This $50,000 camera, that would be 400 megapixels. And Minecraft, still 245 bigger. That would have been a resolution of 36,450 by 17,700 pixels. And while you could only do this back in the beta versions, that might have been for good reason, because just one of these screenshots could take up 1.8 gigabytes of space. And most of the time, they didn't even work. And while I'm not saying I want to take screenshots that are that big, I do think that having the opportunity to take super high resolution screenshots in-game would still be an awesome feature. Or even just being able to change our screenshot resolution anyway, much in the same way you can do with Replay Mod, that would be a welcome return. That puts the power back in the player's hands, instead of accidentally filling up their hard drive when you press the F2 key. In a brief period between Minecraft 1.9 to 1.10, there existed a bug called piston translocation, which is that if the piston arm extended into you and then retracted, it could pull you up through the piston, which when that existed allowed for some incredibly fast and impressive elevators. I mean, really, the ways that this let you manipulate isolate entities was pretty impressive. But now it just doesn't work the same. Not only was the bug patched out, but now if you have a piston push you down, it pushes you into crawling. And I think having some way for this feature to return would be really cool. Maybe even taking after this Reddit post and saying that it should be a translocator block. I don't know, I think it'd be neat. Back in 1.3, we could fit up to 60 cows in this hole. But now, thanks to entity cramming, that maxes out at 24. Which is a shame when you're trying to make an efficient farm, but it's definitely a lot more humane. The Rascal and the Tough Golem might not have won the mob vote, but they are still in Minecraft. Because in Bedrock Edition, there was a special free skin pack that was added in that would let you choose between different clothings for the 12 different skin, including the Rascal, the Sniffer, and the Tough Golem. So it's a far cry from the mobs actually being in the game, but it's a lot better than some of the other mob vote losers got, so I guess you take what you get. Back in version 1.3, Flint used to look 3D, and if you studied it closely, you could see that the item had a shiny texture to it. But all of that changed in snapshot 18W43A, where the Flint item was changed to be a little bit more 2D, and that same shiny texture seemed to have gone away, making it look a lot less like a Minecraft diamond and a whole lot more boring. In older versions of Minecraft, it used to be possible to buy the Eye of Ender item, and this made the Cleric Villager indispensable for speedruns, considering that with this trade, you didn't even need to go to the Nether to get Blaze Powder for your Eyes of Ender. But during the snapshots for Java Edition 1.9, this did get balanced so that you couldn't just skip this integral part of the game, which is a bummer, but I think speedrunners are doing just fine without it. Before any other slab was added to Minecraft, the first of the bunch was actually a dirt slab, but even though it was the first, it never made it past any of the older versions, which is definitely a shame for builders, but with a texture like this, it might have been too distracting to build with anyway. Prior to 1.9, it was possible to kill the Ender Dragon using only snowballs. It was just gonna take a while. And in fairness, you could still kill the Ender Dragon using snowballs, you would just also need to place down end crystals to damage it with the explosions. And given that those same end crystals are gonna heal the dragon, you'd really have to be precise about how you do this. I think if you want to give this a shot at killing it with snowballs, just go back to 1.8. Back in beta 1.8, it was possible that if you held down the right click with a bow in your hand, you could actually spam fire out arrows like this, which I'm not gonna lie, that is pretty satisfying, but I can definitely see why this changed. And it's funny to think that crossbows were the one that got the quick charge enchantment when it seems like our bows were quick charging just fine on their own before the enchantment was added. Before the so-called flattening, there are ways to give yourself special six-sided blocks through give commands in Minecraft. And while some of these have been added in official capacity, such as the six-sided logs or the smooth stone block, I think it'd be great to see something like the six-sided piston return as an official capacity. Maybe it's a crate block. Or if you want to add in extra redstone functionality, you could use this as a way to extend the piston push limit past 12 blocks. I don't know, I just think it would be cool to see these features that were historic in some Minecraft players' journey return officially, especially if they've already picked a few of them to do this with. Back in the day, golden apples used to be ridiculously cheap, and to get one of the basic ones, you only needed to use 8 golden nuggets instead of the 8 ingots that we use today. Though I guess nowadays they give us the absorption hearts, so maybe it is worth paying a little extra. And honestly, I'll save my golden nuggets for crafting golden carrots anyway. Those seem to be more useful. Never craft this block, because while it might seem handy to compress your 9 nether wart down to 1 nether wart block, unlike other compressed material blocks, this can't be crafted back into its base material. And considering the fact that you're able to get these blocks from the Crimson Trees, I'd say it's better to save your nether wart for your potion farm. There's already gonna be plenty enough supply of these the other way around. When chests were first added to Minecraft, they used to be a full block in size, which is different to the 14 pixel chest entities that we're familiar with today. And because they were a full block in size, you were able to place things like torches and redstone over the top of them, which is unfortunately something we lost now. But this old chest would have looked ridiculous if it was waterlogged, so maybe it's for the best that we got the newer option. Ever since Minecraft 1.7, you haven't been able to get a rose in vanilla Minecraft. But the reason isn't all that serious, it's really just because the rose was eventually replaced with the name Poppy instead. And while texture packs like Vanilla Tweaks let you change this back to the original name, I think it's still a bummer for our iron golems. I mean, they don't even give out villagers flowers anymore. This secret feature was added to Minecraft only to be removed shortly after. But for a brief period during release 1.7, you could find a feature in your settings menu called Super Secret Settings. And while that's ominous, when you would click on it, it actually showed off different shader options for Minecraft. And the different settings were weird to say the least. You could go from everything from pixelated to black and white and even upside down. And honestly, I'm surprised it was possible for Minecraft to get more pixelated anyway. But what seemed like an early show-off for adding in shader effects to vanilla Minecraft was quickly removed. And the worst part? We never got to find out the secret. Since beta 1.8 of Minecraft, if you were to dig down into the void and stand on top of bedrock, you'd notice that down around those lower Y levels, there would be a void fog that would cloud up your vision, until eventually you reached to the bottom and it was pitch black, which I've gotta say made branch mining a whole lot scarier to do. And that's probably why this feature was removed in snapshot 14W34C. But since then, Minecraft worlds have gotten twice as deep. And honestly, with the deep dark, I feel like having void fog in the game again would make some sense. I mean, it doesn't fit with the old Minecraft textures, but with Deep Slate, I think it does the job. Well, you're gonna be even more relieved to hear that entities with knockback resistance will now experience reduced knockback from punch bows. So if you have something like a Ravager, which is a little fierce. In the past, if you had a punch bow and you tried to knock it back, it would fly back as a regular mob would, but now it takes reduced knockback. But something like Failbow will take a lot of punch knockback. This is actually a change that I didn't even know needed to be changed. But now scaffolding burns for 1/4 of a smelt instead of 2. The original problem would be that if you crafted bamboo into scaffolding, you would actually get a very high return on your smelts. And all of a sudden you've turned 6 bamboo, which is like 1.5 smelts, into 12.
I don't see anything wrong with that at all.
Now, leaves are a transparent block. You're not supposed to be able to place torches on them. But back in Minecraft Alpha, if you changed your graphics setting to play with fast textures, then you could place a torch against the block, even if you were to change it back to fancy. But don't try to place it on fancy first, because then it would just crash the game. And while neither graphics option lets this work nowadays, you could always do it with the set block command. Here's how you get water in the nether. See, back in Java version 1.2 or older, it was possible that if you put ice in the nether, it would melt and then turn into a water source block, which was fixed in 1.3, but we would eventually get water in the nether once again through this snapshot with glow lichen. Though that got fixed too, so it's definitely something Mojang's trying to keep an eye out for. When I say the phrase audio loops, what do you think of? Well, probably TikTok, but these actually existed in Minecraft well before TikTok was even a thing. See, if you go into the game's old files, you can find these dormant sounds that exist in the folder. And these were meant to play as ambiance in different locations, some of which will play here. Those being things like birds chirping, chimes that would play when you were in caves, and even adding in specific sounds for something like a waterfall, which makes it a lot more exciting than just seeing a 1-block water source hanging out of the side of a cave. Especially with all the changes that we got to world generation and the wild update in the caves and cliffs. And honestly, I would much rather have caves sound like this than the spooky cave sounds that we get otherwise. I'm not past substitution. Now this is a lava bucket and this is a lava source block. So how do we get both in our inventory? Well, in the past, the give command was a lot stronger than it is today. So if you typed in /give player 10 or 11, it would give you either flowing or stationary lava blocks. And as you can probably guess, this got removed in 1.8, which is too bad, but honestly, I don't know the point of having one of these versus just a regular lava bucket. Prior to 1.15, it was possible to break iron doors without a pickaxe. It was just gonna take a while. But now if you were to do this, you're just gonna have wasted your time and not even get an iron door. And both of those seem like a slap in the face. You might not notice it now, but when creepers were first added to Minecraft, they were able to camouflage. And a lot of this was because the original creeper texture actually matched the alpha grass texture that we can see here. So when standing next to the standard foliage, these creepy mobs really did fade into the background. And that made it even tougher to try to pick one of these out during the early versions. But as the textures got updated and the grass color maps changed, creepers stayed the same. And unfortunately for them, now they stick out like a sore thumb. This villager was never seen in Minecraft, but if you go within the game's files, there sure enough is an unused texture for the angry villager mob, featuring red eyes and angry eyebrows. And even though villagers can still get mad in the game if you were to punch them, even with all those particles, it's still not nearly as intimidating as one of these. When it was first added in, the wither was actually much easier to fight, since if you were to catch the wither inside of a minecart as it was charging up, you could interfere with its startup and it would only have as much health as it had before it went into the minecart. So if you did this correctly, you could end up fighting a wither that only had 1/3 of its health. But that bug would get fixed in 1.5, which is unfortunate, but maybe don't tell Mojang about this even easier way to kill the wither. We'll just keep that between us. It's only in recent years that Twitch and Minecraft have become a lot more synonymous, at least in a cultural sense. Because really back in 2013, there was a native way to integrate your Twitch.tv account directly into Minecraft. You could literally broadcast out of your Minecraft without the need for OBS and have your Twitch chat show up as if it was a regular chat message. It's a weird idea to say the least, and I can get why the feature was removed back then, but with things like Minecraft Championship and the Dream SMP really making Twitch and Minecraft more of a household thing together, I think it would be a fun idea, especially if they do something like this game called Choice Chamber, where your chat can actually choose to summon in things through the game. There's been plenty of unofficial mods that have done this, so having an official way to do this, especially if they already have some of the code, that would be awesome. This is an iron golem, and this is the love golem. If you put together 4 iron blocks and a carved pumpkin on top, you'll of course get the love golem. Exclusively found in the Love and Hugs update, this special mob is meant to be a manifestation of the villager's love, and that's probably the reason why it's passive toward any players or even hostile mobs, which, yeah, does mean that it doesn't do much. But in fairness, we can't attack mobs in this joke update either, so at least it's not alone. With the World of Color update in 1.12, a lot of our diet items changed color, and they weren't the only ones to do it, since the shulker boxes also got a whole new set of colors. And personally, I kinda like how some of the original colors look for the shulker boxes, but it's hard to say that the new ones aren't more true to the actual dye colors, so I get why the change was made. You can't craft this item anymore, but before Minecraft 1.9, there was a way to craft an enchanted golden apple. Though to do this, you would have to pay a hefty price, putting 8 golden blocks inside of the crafting table around an apple, which is a hefty fee, but considering that nowadays the only way to find these is through rare loot chests, I think I'd much rather set up a gold farm and do this the old-fashioned way. At least then it's a matter of skill, not luck. When dolphins were first added to Minecraft, they came along with a bug, which is that through special methods, you were actually able to equip armor onto dolphins. Granted, you wouldn't be able to see it since it didn't render on top of the mob, but if you tried to hit one of them, especially one with thorns, you'd notice that they'd actually have the armor and its effects. And then if you killed the dolphin, it'd even drop the armor as well. But this was eventually removed and it hasn't been in the game since, which is maybe just to keep us from doing a cruel joke of giving a dolphin Frostwalker and watching whatever kind of horror unloads. Here's how you get infinite obsidian, at least infinite obsidian back in 2012. Since the system to make this was just using a standard cobblestone generator and then placing a piece of redstone dust where the cobblestone would form. And there you go, infinite obsidian. Though understandably this got patched out in 1.8. But infinite obsidian is still possible, you're just gonna need a wither and a whole bunch of nether portals. For a brief period in Minecraft Java, there was a time where you were able to craft both horse armor and horse saddles. And oddly enough, there was a unique item just for riding the horse with this saddle, meaning that even if you went through all the effort to get 5 leather and 3 iron ingots, you couldn't use this on a pig. And even stranger still, it could be stacked up to 32 in a stack, which again made it unique. But that didn't save this or the horse armor crafting recipes from getting patched out of the game shortly after. From version 1.8 to 1.13 of Minecraft, there existed a special option in the world building settings. Or should I say options, because when you clicked on this custom world builder menu, it allowed you to customize a whole bunch about your Minecraft world. Like the ability to change the sea level, the dungeon count, whether you had villages or not, and a whole bunch more. It makes a lot of sense for a sandbox game. Honestly, I'm surprised that it's been cut out entirely. But seeing the kind of horrors that you can generate with this world type, maybe that's for the best. Before the path block was ever added to Minecraft, our villages looked entirely different. And the reason was that these originally spawned with gravel roads instead. But ever since the grass path block was added in, you won't see any gravel show up in this way anymore. Which is weird when you see the grass path blocks out inside of the desert as well. Maybe it's just me, but I feel like gravel would have made more sense there. If you look at the original sprite file for the items.png that used to be in Minecraft, what you notice is quite a few items that were textured but never added to the game fully. And among those was the quiver, which had its origins in the Legend of the Chambered game that Notch had made prior. And more interestingly is that this wasn't just a forgotten thing, since on the 22nd of January in 2010, the texture was actually flipped to be a mirrored version. So they didn't forget about it, until of course they switched the way that Minecraft worked entirely with the resource pack update, and that meant we lost the quiver. That was until Dinnerbone tweeted out these 2 screenshots, one showing the quiver being used in survival, and another one showing it in the creative inventory. So it seemed like they even planned to add it in with the new tipped arrows. But again, after 1.9 fully came out, there was no mention of this anymore. But with inventory management being such a big problem for Minecraft, having a different way to hold extra arrows on hand without having to clog up your inventory, I think that's still worth exploring. This is dirt, and this is grassless dirt. But that's actually the point, since while there's no way to prevent a regular block of dirt from getting grass grown on top of it, the special grassless dirt variant allows map makers to actually have a variation of dirt that they don't have to worry about keeping it separate and quarantined from the other grass blocks. And now, I know, there is coarse dirt, but that itself has a different texture, which doesn't so much solve the problem as it does just brush it under the rug. And since this version of dirt already existed with old commands, I think adding it back in with the help of NBT data would be a nice middle ground for the more recent versions. Even though the allay made it into Minecraft during the Wild update, it was originally planned all the way back for the Nether update. Although back then, it would have been called the Wisp, and it would have had a much different look. Even when it was renamed to the allay and it was planned to be added in, there could have been different colors that we saw for the mob, which I'll say I'm disappointed that we didn't see. But you can find a yellow allay that shows up in the Minecraft Legends trailer, so I guess the idea is still there. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?